Good evening. I want to welcome everyone to our webinar this evening entitled Envisioning the Future of MCUSA Climate Justice Initiatives. I will be the host for the evening, Lorraine Stutzman-Amstutz, Denominational Minister for Peace and Justice for Mennonite Church USA. And tonight, I'm happy to be joined by Jennifer Haltman-Schrock, who is the former director of Mennonite Creation Care Network, or MCCN, as you might hear it referred to, and Carla Stolzfus-Detweiler, who is MCUSA's new Climate Justice Coordinator. Tonight's gathering is in webinar format, so all attendees are muted, and the chat is disabled. We will, however, be putting some links in the chat that you will be able to access. But we do welcome your questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end. Please feel free to use the Q&A that's at the bottom of your screen, that feature. Only the panelists will be able to see your questions. Not everyone will be seeing them. I also want to say thanks to those of you who submitted questions ahead of time. We've actually tried to answer some of those as we go along, but we realize that we may need a second or third webinar for some of them, but we have seen them who have submitted them earlier. If you need Spanish translation, you can click the globe at the bottom of your screen and just know that this webinar is being translated. And I'm going to turn it over to Carla, who will lead us in a devotional.
Thank you, Lorraine. I'm grateful to be with all of you tonight and honored to be serving in the role of MCUSA's Climate Justice Coordinator. I'd like to invite you to join me in a little time of reflection. Psalm 85 has been a touchstone for me in the face of suffering for people and our planet. And some years ago, when I was a seminary student, I created a collage, a piece of art, illustrating Psalm 85. It was a response to an experience of a rural plunge ministry class that I participated in. So I'm going to ask Crystal to share an image of that collage so you can see it as I describe it a little bit. I'm going to share the story behind the collage. So you can see this collage now. And if you can get a close look at it, you'll see the couple, man and wife, who hosted me in Powers Lake, North Dakota. Their names are Jim and Darlene Futh. They're standing next to their cattle in the picture, if you can see that. So I stayed with Jim and Darlene. They fed me and gave me a place to sleep, and I spent days shadowing the pastor of the local Baptist church for this rural plunge class that I took. I was staying in a very small rural town with an economy based on agriculture. At that time, it was primarily commodity crops and cattle. And while I was there as a ministry student, I was struck with how intertwined the people's lives were with the land, and how the suffering and the flourishing of the land and the people were one. It was clear to me that my hosts loved their land and their cattle and cared for them so tenderly. They commented about how agriculture had changed over their years of farming. And I remember Darlene telling me, "We farmers have to be chemists now." One morning, I gathered with an ecumenical women's prayer group. And the women in that group were very grieved by the journey of a young man in their community who had a good paying job with Monsanto spraying agricultural chemicals on test plots. And this young man, who was a father with young children, was very ill with cancer. And it was clear that these women feared that his life was going to be very short. And you can see my depiction of this young man and the women praying for him on the right side of the collage. Then when I gathered with the little Baptist church there on Sunday morning, there were about 20 people in attendance. And in this very small congregation, they had a list of 14 people in their bulletin, people they were praying for who were suffering from cancer. I left Powers Lake, North Dakota, full of grief for the families who were caught in an agricultural and economic system that I was convinced was poisoning the land and their loved ones. And as I prayed for the land and the people of Powers Lake, Psalm 85 expressed my inner longings. That psalm was and continues to be a powerful cry to God to heal the land and all who live on it. It's a cry for love for the land, to be joined with truth about destructive human actions. It's a prayer for justice and peace to kiss one another. And it presents a hope-filled vision of well-being for the land and the people that I feel can guide us as we long for the healing of our climate. And so I invite you to listen now as I read Psalm 85. I'm going to be reading a paraphrase that was written by Marcin Vroon Rienstra, who wrote the book Swallow's Nest, a feminine reading of the Psalms. So listen as I read Psalm 85. There was a time, O God, when you favored this land and restored the fortunes of your people. You forgave their wrongdoing and pardoned all their sin. You withdrew your wrath and your hot indignation cooled. Restore us again, O God of our salvation. Are you still angry with us? How long will your anger persist? Will it last through all generations? Revive us again, that we, your people, may find joy in you. Show us your steadfast love, O God. Make us holy and whole. Listen with me while El Shaddai speaks. She speaks peace to her people, to the faithful, to those who return to her with heartfelt repentance. All who are devoted to God will surely and soon be free, free to dwell in a land once more filled with her beauty and bounty. Let loving kindness and truthfulness meet. Let mercy and honesty embrace one another. Let faithfulness spring like grass from the earth, and justice rain down from the sky. Let righteousness make a way for our God, and integrity a path for her feet. Surely El Shaddai will give what is good, and our land will be fruitful and peaceful again. Amen. And Crystal, you can end the screen share there. So just a few concluding reflections on this psalm. Those of you who know me well know that I'm an avid gardener and a farmer wannabe. I most recently worked at a nonprofit farm teaching methods of regenerative agriculture. And so through my time working on numerous farms in my life, I feel privileged to have witnessed humans interacting with the land and all its creatures in ways that are caring and loving for the land. And I have witnessed the wonders of regeneration, of depleted land restored to diverse habitat, of neglected land made fruitful through the partnership of humans and animals and microbes and Creator God. So I am convinced that the vision painted in Psalm 85 and repeated in the prophets and echoed by Jesus, this is not a far off and unattainable vision. It's a reality that we taste and see as we listen to what God is speaking to us through creation, and as we partner with God, with God's creation, and with one another to heal our aching planet. And I invite you to pray with me. Creator God, may we, followers of Jesus in Mennonite Church USA, be attentive to your restorative presence in our world. May we be attentive to your presence this very hour. And may we join you in creating fruitfulness, justice, and peace for all your people and all of your creation. Amen.
Carla, thank you for your powerful reflection, sharing that with us. As we make a shift to talk a bit more about the transition and kind of the vision for where the climate justice work will be, and looking some at also what has been through Mennonite Creation Care Network, I want to talk about one of the questions that we've heard as we've made this transition, which is how we made the shift from creation care to climate justice. I certainly believe the two are interconnected concepts related to sustainability, related to equity. I think given that this new position within MCUSA under the Peace and Justice portfolio provides us with an opportunity to continue building on the belief that we have a moral and ethical responsibility to care for and steward the earth and its resources that creation care embodies. So the aspect of justice is concerned with the social and economic inequalities exacerbated by climate change that particularly impacts marginalized communities. It means advocating for policies, for actions that do not disproportionately burden vulnerable populations, but rather promote equitable distribution of resources and opportunities. I think, and I believe, that both creation care and climate justice recognize the need to transition to a more equitable and sustainable society, and that we need both to reinforce each other as we engage in this work. So we're going to continue to talk about what that transition looks like and the work, as I mentioned before. So I want to invite Jennifer to talk about initiatives that under the MCC umbrella. Jennifer, you're muted.
Just say that. Hello, everyone. It's good to be with you. First of all, I want to say that I'm very happy that MCUSA is interested in taking up the work that MCCN has begun and to continue it with plans to further develop climate justice initiatives. I am particularly thrilled that Carla Stolzfus-Detweiler was available and interested in MCUSA's position. I have confidence in the background she brings as a pastor, as an administrator, and as a person who loves the earth. I also feel good about this transition because I know that whenever there is a change in leadership, and in this case, a long-term change in the sponsoring organization, there are opportunities for new things to emerge. And fruitful change is possible in a way that it isn't during stable periods in an organization's life. So I'm excited to see what comes next. One of MCCN's biggest challenges was reaching people if they didn't come looking for us. Not everybody's top priorities fit under the label creation care. And we were part of a nature center with a regional focus, not a binational focus. Mennonite Church USA has a wider net and a longer history of working with a wide variety of congregations. That should make it easier for more people to benefit from the resources that we and the network of environmental folks sprinkled across Mennonite churches have to share. When I look back over MCCN's history, I can see times when it was easy to support climate justice work and make benefits available to more people, and times when we felt very handicapped. It was easy when our constituents, people like you with roots in a particular community and boots on the ground, acted as allies for people in your region. And it was hard or impossible when that link didn't exist or had broken. Here's an example. A few years ago, we were able to offer green mustard seed grants for projects in congregations or Anabaptist nonprofits. In one case, a conference minister went to bat for a congregation that needed insulation for their building badly. This was a church of immigrants for whom paperwork in English and long-distance electronic communications were barriers. If their conference minister had not interceded, they would not have known about us, and we would not have known about them. And that, yes, this was a worthy project on multiple levels. We would not have known what they had endured in their home country. We would not have known how they were drawing on their experiences with violence to wrestle with what it means to forgive and to act as mediators here in this country. But they had someone who believed in them and shared their story. Another example you may be familiar with is Shalom Mennonite Fellowship's relationship with the Apache people of Arizona, who were trying to save Oak Flat, a place that is sacred to them and that is in danger of becoming a copper mine. Shalom brought this to the church at large. They said, when we listen to the indigenous people in our region, this is what we're hearing, and they're calling for prayer and action to save their land. Can you put out a call to join them? Well, yes, we could do that. It's easy to support climate justice work when all of us are attuned to the needs in our spheres of influence and stay in contact with the broader church. I thank each of you for the ways that you have built those webs of connection. Now let's take a minute to imagine a future with a stronger climate justice focus. I have two examples based on past initiatives. I want to emphasize that I am offering these examples as an imaginative starting point, not a blueprint that I expect Carla and Lorraine will follow. I don't know where the Spirit will lead them. It could be in different directions. You go, MCUSA. But let's start with the past and imagine. I'll begin with MCCN's Net Zero Energy Grant. Thanks to Russell D. Young, we've been able to provide 2 $5,000 solar grants per year to churches going solar for the last 8 years. This fund helped with 17 solar projects and a couple of car charging stations. When the 3 churches from 2023 are complete, these churches will be producing over 650,000 kilowatt hours a year of renewable energy. Now, the net zero energy grants have been a much appreciated encouragement to middle-class churches. Sometimes those grants were the inspiration that got the project going, or they were the crucial hump money. But it doesn't enable a church whose finances are limited to put on solar panels if they can't raise the rest of the capital. Nor does it save a woman in a village in Africa 3 hours of manual labor a day. What if, in the future, we all set a goal of broadening the range of people who can benefit from green energy? What would that look like? The good news, one good piece of good news, is that the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 is in our favor. And it is now easier for nonprofits to afford solar panels. Through a direct payback from the government, they can now get the same 30% benefit that households and businesses that pay taxes get when they install solar. What is more, the IRA benefits for nonprofits that are Black, Indigenous, people of color, or live in a lower income neighborhood are even more generous. What if some of us who are good at networking found ways to let all of our churches and everyone in our communities know that? A lot of people are not aware that solar makes sense financially, as well as being good for the environment these days. What if there were more households that said, we've got money to spare or capital we could loan. I'd like to make the net zero energy fund bigger. We had one church from a state with generous solar laws that received one of our grants and did so well, they returned the money to our fund within 2 years for someone else to use 2 years later. What if the fund were much bigger and grants were larger? Another barrier that churches face when trying to go solar is having a group of people with the time and the self-confidence to persist in making this happen for their church. There are at least 40 churches in MCUSA with solar panels at this point. What if some of them said, hey, we know how to get solar panels on a roof. We can coach other people in our state. Help us connect with them. And some of our churches have helped others in that way as well, some of our solar churches. Or what if there were another group of people that said, we know what a difference solar panels make for rural communities in the developing world because Sibonokule Nkube has explained it to us in an article that Mennonite World Conference published a while back. We're going to work on developing solar infrastructure and expertise in rural Africa. Imagine. My second example has to do with what Mennonites have traditionally called simple lifestyle. When I look back over the blogs on our website from our first decade, I see a lot of stories emphasizing individual actions and lifestyle choices. Now that there are more faith-based environmental work going on, there's a broader range of material and work going on, including structural analysis and large-scale projects and advocacy work. This broader approach is much needed, but it does not replace the need to learn to live within Earth's limits and to model what that can look like. It also doesn't excuse us from using the power that we already have. This leads me to the question, what would simple lifestyle that is informed by climate justice look like? One venue that we have to help us think about that is the Generation Z Energy and Spirit Challenge. We designed this as a way of helping people act on the Youth and Young Adult Climate Summit last July. The challenge is open to anyone, but the incentives, which include outdoor outings for youth groups and grants for those attending Mennonite colleges, they benefit Generation Z. The goal is to work together across the generations to respond to climate change in some way, whether that is helping clean up a natural disaster with Mennonite Disaster Service, or advocating for a more bikeable city, or something else. What if we took the time to listen carefully to what our youngest generations are saying about climate change and found a way to act on that? What if We wedded the simple lifestyle emphasis of our ancestors with a knowledge of the climate consequences of our lifestyle choices and actively shared this perspective. What if every young person in our churches graduated from high school knowing how to properly maintain a furnace, or how to use a carbon calculator, set a carbon budget, and live by it? Or how to present a proposal, work with committees, and get stuff done in a church? Or most important of all, how to live life at a pace that allows us to even think these things. Imagine that. I have said all I have to say. Over to you, Carla.
Well, I am inspired, Jennifer, and I would love to take those what ifs and pursue them. So I am grateful for the legacy of Mennonite Creation Care Network, and I look forward to carrying on much of that good work while sharpening the point on climate justice and thinking about how we can truly collaborate with the diversity of churches in MCUSA. I do look forward to continue to work with the solar grants and to explore ways to make those accessible to congregations of color or with less access to financial resources. And I look forward to listening to young people and to participating in administering the Gen Z Energy and Spirit Challenge. That's an exciting project. I really look forward to seeing what emerges there. We live at a time that awareness about climate change and climate injustice is growing. And there are so many organizations, both secular and faith-based, that have formed to support this work of healing our planet. And so when I think about what our work is with climate justice and MCUSA, we don't need to do it all. There are many good groups working on this. And we can collaborate strategically with other groups who are working with creation care and climate justice. And as I think particularly about some other groups within our Anabaptist family, I look forward to collaborating with the Anabaptist Climate Collaborative and Mennonite Central Community and the Wild Church Network. I'm sure there are more organizations within our Anabaptist family that are making this a priority, and I look forward to collaborating across these efforts. I believe that Doug Kaufman, the director of the Anabaptist Climate Collaborative, is with us tonight on this call, and I'm looking forward to meeting with him tomorrow so that we can talk and think together about what are the specific areas of emphasis of that organization, Anabaptist Climate Collaborative, and MCUSA's Climate Justice Initiative, so that we can support one another, champion certain areas and not duplicate one another's work. As I mentioned, I also look forward to working with Mennonite Central Committee. MCC provides wonderful guidance for climate advocacy work through their Washington desk, and I want to build on their strength there and collaborate. I also look forward to collaborating across borders, particularly with Sandy Plett, who is the Climate Action Coordinator with Mennonite Church Canada. And just being aware there's good cross-pollination among churches in MC Canada and MC USA. We can learn from one another. So there will be more collaborative relationships with MCUSA's climate justice initiatives and other faith-based groups. And I can't give a lot of detail. I'm just a few weeks in to my role here, but I'm really excited to explore these relationships. And I am convinced that our work is stronger together, collaborating, listening to one another and learning together. Our work will be stronger. I would like to offer some thoughts about what my priorities are that I'm imagining as I step into this role as MCUSA's Climate Justice Coordinator. And I would say that my first priority is listening. Listening first to God speaking to us through creation. There is so much wisdom that surrounds us in the natural world. And so I want to listen. What are the birds and the soil, the water and the air telling us? I want to support the spiritual practice of listening to creation and expecting to hear God's voice, nudging us to love and to act on behalf of the beloved. And I want to practice listening to the congregations who make up Mennonite Church USA to help guide this work. I'd like to hear, what are the needs of the diversity of MCUSA's congregations when it comes to climate change? You who are on this call, what are your congregation's top concerns? And the congregations who aren't represented on this call, I wonder what their concerns are related to climate change. I wonder, how can we listen to one another? Again, connecting the diversity of churches in our denomination. How can we build authentic relationships? One thing that I observe in Mennonite Church USA and in our nation, and probably true throughout the world, is that people of privilege are more sheltered, more likely to be sheltered from the adverse effects of climate change, while those who have less access to resources are more likely to suffer from climate injustice. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about climate justice. There's this inequity experienced. So, for instance, in the midst of a heat wave, some of us have access to air conditioning. We can pay for it. We can stay inside until the heat is past. While others of us may be in a sister congregation in our town or in our state, may swelter in the heat, and our health may be seriously threatened because we lack access to air conditioning, or our work requires us to stay outdoors. I hope to help us learn one another's stories of suffering and celebration on our journeys in this time of climate crisis. And I hope that we, as a family of faith, as a denomination, can grow in awareness that all our suffering is one. And similarly, all our healing is one. And I think this is just an extension of the work of Mennonite Creation Care Network in connecting that there are actions we can take day by day, from prayer to policy advocacy to personal or communal lifestyle choices that can help to heal our communities and our planet. Ultimately, what I'm hoping, my big hope for MCUSA and Climate Justice Initiative is to cultivate love for God, for neighbor, and for self, recognizing that our neighbors include humans, other than human creatures, and habitats that are threatened or destroyed by climate change. Our most effective climate justice work will be rooted in real relationships and in real love for God, neighbor, and self. And I look forward to pursuing that with you, with Mennonite Church USA.
Thank you to both Carla and to Jennifer. I am just feeling like I'm honored to be in this space with both of you. I so appreciate, Jennifer, again, what you have brought to the work over your last, I want to say 15 years or so with Mennonite Creation Care Network. I think you have truly set the foundation for the work that will continue. And I'm so appreciative of the way you have shared so freely your knowledge and your gifts as you see the work transition to MCUSA. I think that you have been a gift to us to be able to carry on the work. And Carla, I just so appreciate you starting this work 2 weeks ago and being so willing to say, sure, I'll jump onto a webinar and talk about my vision for what the work could be. Thank you for that. I so appreciate hearing from you. I appreciate the authenticity that you bring. I appreciate the experience you bring and really look forward to seeing where this work goes on behalf of the denomination and the conferences and the congregations. I think it's really wonderful to see us moving in this direction. And so I'm so appreciative of what you both bring. Before we close, I do just want to acknowledge a couple questions that came in. So one, and maybe, well, Carla, this would be for you. The question, you talked about networking with Wild Church Network. So can you say anything more about what you see as the purpose of networking? Is it relationship building, collaboration on something, education? And full disclosure, this is coming from someone who's the founder of a local Wild Church. So I don't know if you have something that you would like to respond to that.
Yes, I would love to respond to that. And just to say, hooray, I'm so glad that you have helped to found a Wild Church in your community. And I don't know exactly what the collaboration will look like, if it's just a link to a website, or maybe it's some stories that we share of wild churches and what they are doing. But what I think what the Wild Church movement has to offer us is what I was talking about a few minutes ago, that the Wild Church movement, as I've experienced Wild Church a few times so far, is really helping us to learn to listen to creation, to hear God's voice in creation, to pay attention and reconnect with the other than human world around us, which I think is a spiritual practice that has been lost in recent generations and that we need to relearn. I think it was vibrant spiritual practice for the Hebrew people that we read about in scripture. But it's something that we need to relearn. And it's, I think it's part of what I think can energize climate action is this sense of love and connection and nourishment that we receive from God through creation, and that Wild Church is doing such a good job of pointing people to, feeding people that way. So
Thank you. Another question is just around the resources and the input from so many who have contributed to MCCN, whether that will be accessible through our climate justice work at MCUSA. The answer to that is yes. We are hoping that those resources will be available. We're still figuring out, because this is still new, we're still figuring out how that website transitions, but we certainly want to make sure those resources are either on the web page or archived, but they will be accessible. So we want to make sure that happens. There was another question just about the intersectionality of peace and justice work with this issue. And certainly there, I mean, it's very specific. I think that climate justice work is put under the desk of peace and justice. I think we recognize that intersectionality and certainly want to build on how we talk about this across peace and justice issues, that we don't want to be siloed, that we recognize these are interconnected and we want to work at it in that way. I don't know if Carla or Jennifer, either one of you want to add to any of that?
I would definitely agree that it's an area that needs more work. Considering Mennonites' strong history as people of peace and our commitment to that, the links between peace and environmental work. And this is true not just in our denomination, but in academia as well and other places. They are in silos, and building those bridges across them is very important work. Because violence and militarism are some of the worst things for the environment. If we were in peace all the time, that would go a long way toward helping our climate problems.
I don't have a lot more to add, except that I am grateful to be situated in the transformative peacemaking department of Mennonite Church USA, just so there can be that attention to the overlapping, the intersectionality of these peace and justice concerns. And I look forward to conversation with others who are working at a variety of justice issues in this work. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I just want to, before we close, I also want to give each of you just an opportunity, Carla and Jennifer, just for any closing remarks that you want to give, maybe some kind of your hope as we move forward and where we go from here. If you just want to take a few minutes, or if there's anything else that you want to respond to, feel free.
I look forward to more interaction with the people who are on this call and your congregations. I hope that you will reach out with your questions, your ideas. I look forward to engaging with people on the ground, people in congregations, so that I can learn how we can resource you and address your concerns.
I think what I'd like to say to people, especially younger people, is that doing this kind of work is not necessarily glamorous, and it's hard to see that you're making a difference. But that doesn't mean it's unimportant or that your way of doing it is unimportant or less than others. There is work for all of us to do in this area, no matter what your gifts and what you're comfortable doing. Everybody can do something, which is something we often say, but it needs to be said. So thank you for the ways that you have supported MCCN, and I wish you all well as you continue to work at this as a church, as churches, and individually, and as our denomination.
Well, Jennifer, don't think of this as farewell for too long. We know where you are. We know how to reach you, and we will certainly take advantage of that. And hopefully you'll set your boundaries as needed. I also, someone sent in a question about how they can work in conjunction with MCUSA's Climate Justice Initiative as part of storytelling. She has a solo performance on weaving Minnow ancestor stories with those of activism. So just to let you know, we'll be in touch with you. I think that's that's exciting to hear that you have developed that. And I think we want to make sure that we stay in touch. So I think Carla's information was in the chat. Or we can put it there, or we can reach out to you as well, since you've registered and we have your information. So thank you for that. There's also been a question of just how many people have joined this webinar. So just to say that we had about 65 people who signed up. We've had about 39, or I think I saw 42 participants at one point. But again, knowing that we have recorded it, and I know that some people who can't make it because of other things that happen in life, they will be able to listen to the recording. I also just want to remind you that for the latest news and events from MCUSA, be sure to subscribe to Piecemeal. It's our weekly e-newsletter. So if you haven't done that, hopefully there will be information about what's going on with our climate justice work, as well as across the denomination, the work that we're doing. We also have Menoticias, which is our monthly Spanish language newsletter that's published in collaboration with the Hispanic Ministries of Mennonite Education Agency. So please subscribe to that if you're interested. And I think Cami has put the links in the chat for that as well. I just want to make sure I'm not missing. Thank you. People have expressed gratitude for the input from Carla and Jennifer. Thank you so much. We are so grateful that you joined us and have interest in this work, and we feel confident that this is something that's only going to continue to expand across the denomination. And I think raising that awareness and doing things like this certainly helps that. And I think I mentioned this earlier, that there were also some questions that obviously we couldn't get to all of them tonight that had been presented earlier. And I think it would be helpful to have another webinar or two as we go. We'll let Carla at least finish her first month before we schedule another one, because We want her to stay with us for a very, very long time. So thank you all for joining us. And I want to close out our time together in prayer. So please join me in prayer. Dear God, we have come before you tonight with hearts feeling the burden of injustices we see happening in our planet and its most vulnerable inhabitants. We acknowledge that climate change is not just an environmental issue, but a matter of justice and a matter of equality. We ask for wisdom and guidance for our leaders, our policymakers, and for each of us as we seek to prioritize the well-being of people and the planet over short-term gains. We are also hopeful that we will have the courage to make changes in our own lives that contribute to a more sustainable and just world and help us each to take responsibility for our impact on the environment. Be with us as we each go our way this evening. Amen.